to this session. I hope you have had a wonderful day yesterday and a wonderful morning this far. So I'm going to try to spare you PowerPoint slides today. Okay? So I'm going to switch to another favorite tool of mine, which is Excel. Okay? Hence my warning about there will be a lot of text, some numbers in that one. We're gonna simply look at what goes on a hacker's machine. So there are a lot of talking about, you know what, it's this fancy, that fancy. They use tools that are tailor-made this way, that way, and so on. But not a lot of occasions when you actually can see what's going on a threat actor's machine. Right? We have been lucky a few times to see exactly what has been going on the threat actor's own machine, you know, their own machine where they operate from, not when they are on the customer side or on the victim side of things. So this is what this session is going to be all about. I guess some of you will get a little bit disappointed about, you know, you have a vision or picture or imagination about hackers being something like a magicians or something like that. That's going to be tiered a little bit here and there, right? So the specific case I'm going to talk about and show you information from is related to this text. This text is a piece of a description of a hacker group or a group called Octotempest. The attribution of the events we're going to see here was made towards this group. It's not only our attribution. We did the incident management thing or the incident investigation, but we also had communication with some other incident teams, and we are both in agreement that this is that group. Okay. I just highlighted one part here. It says this group is famous for doing a couple of things. They do actually password resets of user accounts, and they do MFA credential resets. So remember the word reset. They're not adding their credentials to the victim. They're actually resetting. So that means they remove all the other credentials and artifacts and keep their own, which in many minds should like, oh, wait a minute. So me as a victim, if I would be hit by this group, I will actually know it. You say they reset my password. So will not be able to access my systems anymore. And they actually reset my MFA credentials, so I'm not be able to use those anymore. Well, that's correct. That's exactly how they operate. This group is also famous to attack telco industries, financial sector. So they aim for a little bit of the big bucks and some important actors that can help them in some of their operations. They are famous for running SIM swapping operations, you know, replacing or moving your phone number to another SIM card, et cetera, et cetera. So they have specialized in some of these. And there are some documented evidence that they actually call people, and they are not nice when they do that. They are threatening people to do things. To the degree they say, hey, if you don't forward the PIN code you're receiving on your phone the next 5 minutes, there will be somebody knocking your door the next hour. This is not a nice group. So let's have a look. I said my name is Hasain Alshakarti. I work as a principal cybersecurity advisor. I've been in the business since mid-90s. So I've basically done everything you can imagine somebody can do within cybersecurity, from starting as a developer with coding and all the way today to both architectural discussions, but also digging in the rabbit holes. What did threat actor do, et cetera. So What actually happened? Let's have a look at this guy. So this is a timeline, and when our forensic guys, when we put together a timeline, when you do an investigation, you want to exactly track what happened, right? So everybody doing investigations, forensics or not, they will keep track of all of the events in a timeline. There are a lot of fancy tools out there to keep track of a timeline events, and then there is Excel, right? There is a lot of debate which tool is best, and we always, let's try the new one. Wait a minute, Excel can do this. Excel, yeah. So here we are. Excel is our go-to tool. I guess I need to zoom in a little bit. That's better readability? Are we okay? Good? So you see the events here says self-service password reset triggered. Self-service, this is a customer running Office 365, Azure, Entra ID, or if you prefer, Active Directory. So self-service password reset flow activity progress. User submitted their user ID, and then user was presented with available alternatives. Okay? And they are not doing this for one single user. They are doing this for a bunch of users. See the number of users here? Now we have somehow obfuscated the usernames and the company names, so we are not outing anybody. Hopefully not. Will this trigger an alert anywhere? If I will go to the self-service password reset feature of Azure Entra ID, will anybody be alerted? Somebody said you? Risky, exactly. There could be some risky, okay, but then you need to proceed with some activities to a certain degree. But if we just do the initial one, and the initial one is actually this far. So if I go, this is the Microsoft Self-Service Password Reset. So if I go there, punch in a username, and they have like, type in the the code so you are not a robot, you know, the fancy characters thingy. And then next step is here. This will be indicated self-service password reset initiated, alternatives shown on the screen. That's exactly what we saw in the recorded events. Now, if I'm an attacker, I know now whomever the account I'm trying to figure out things about, they do have two authentication methods, two MFA methods here. The first one is a phone number. You can either text or call the phone number, right? And the two last digits of the phone number are 06. If I know what I'm doing, my next stage would be, okay, I verify, is that the expected phone number for the targeted user? I'm already getting a clue, right? Next thing is that, well, the user have declared they have an authenticator app running on their phone or somewhere, and I can either push a notification or acquire a code, you know, the TOTP code from the authenticator app. I'm actually doing this for my colleague's account, David.
That's my account.
Exactly. So he does have 06 as a ending digit in his phone number, and I verified that. Yeah. So this far, this will not trigger any alerts. There will be a record that the process has started, and I have been presented with the alternatives. Cool. So what if the threat actor here were actually doing exactly this? They were just going enumerating. Yeah, we have a bunch of usernames. Let's see which ones have what kind of secondary authentication methods. What phone numbers? They want to verify that. Are there any alternative email addresses? Are they just using the authenticator app, et cetera, and so on. And then further down this, so they start this is UTC time. And the 30th of January, 02/18 UTC. Okay, and then when we come down here, scroll just a little bit over here. So here we go. Then we have Salesforce password reset activity progress. User was submitting user ID, presented with verification option. User started mobile SMS verification option. User completed verification option and completed all the steps required. Password successfully reset. So they targeted a bunch of users, selected one of these, and completed the process. Right? If you look at the time, there are not many minutes going between the start and the end of that process. So somebody had the user on the hook. This could be very well a version of an adversary in the middle proxy. You know, you've heard about different types of man-in-the-middle, adversary-in-the-middle proxies to steal credentials, steal tokens, etc. Why not do the same thing, but for the password reset? And this will this now trigger an alert? If your user go and reset his or her password, is this triggering an alert? And you're doing it successfully with the challenges presented in terms of additional authentication methods. Everything is fine. The only thing here is that the IP address is a bit off. In this particular case, if we just double check how off is the IP address, just use any tools of your choice. Now, this is an address in USA, Sugar Land, Texas. How often do you users actually run their stuff in a data center? Isn't that a little bit of a worriness? Right? You know what? I have my VM on data center in Texas. It's awesome because I can take all the streams from whatever streaming service in the US, and then I can sign into my corporate and do password resets. Why not? So, and that user, when we check all the things up, that user didn't really belong to that GeoIP area. That user was located somewhere else in the world, in a different continent, to be very specific. But this will not generate an alert, because you just did a legitimate password reset from that alien IP address location, and then if you follow that with a sign-in, it's still not that very weird because you have just used the same IP address in the step before. So yes, there will be evidences in the logs, but it's not really an alert we're talking about. So what happens next? So self-serve password reset flow progresses. Well, that was okay, successfully, and then user sign-in activities. So single-factor authentication. And it says strong factor authentication is required. User deleted authenticator factor, et cetera. Keep me sign-in is interrupted. This is just the regular sign-in flow that kicks in, right? And it says, yeah, you just did your password reset, so yeah, the next step in that process will, okay, you probably need to redefine some of your MFA methods in here. So threat actor triggers also that. And they go all the way, like deleting authenticator app with notification, and so on. So they do a lot of things related to the MFA. Started security info registration, user registered info, and There we go. So now user is successfully signed in. They have a brand new password, and they have defined brand new MFA credentials. All in control of the threat actor. Actually, we saw these times are in UTC. And if we look where the user was located, this is in the middle of the night for the user. So another interesting, does that user actually sign in the middle of the night regularly? Well, no. Will that generate an alert? Eventually, yes. Depends if we have, you mentioned the detecting abnormal activities, risky sign-ins, behavioral, exactly. Risky user behavior, et cetera, et cetera. That might or might not, depending on your licensing level, your policying, et cetera. Right. So in this case, it didn't actually, which there are a few reasons behind that. So we're still talking about the same user. So move messages to folder, item, etc. So immediately after they actually signed in, they went straight to the inbox and they deleted the message that says, just a reminder, you just did a password reset. That maps towards regular user activity as well. We ourselves do that, right? Yeah, you don't need to give me a reminder. I know, I did a password reset. I delete that email. There should be like a trigger on the user risk base. Once again, there are a lot of factors related to that. I totally agree. If all the policies were set correctly, we should actually have a risky user behavior, risky sign-in indication, right? So, and that thing goes on until a very interesting event happens a few minutes later. So they go now straight and do register a new device with that user. What does that mean? Well, obviously, they register a device with a name, the second line, desktop dash, random combination of characters and numbers. Have you seen this before? Default name of a newly installed Windows something, right? It was get desktop dash or PC dash or something like that. Any somehow experienced investigator will always look for these. Oh, desktop dash, welcome again. It's the good old desktop dash. It's most probably a threat actor doing something. So they register that one, and you see the note, it says MDE. This is Microsoft Defender 365, whatever you call it today, for endpoint. So this means, actually, they do register their own Windows-based device. So they make it member of Azure. And it actually automatically gets onboarded to the Defender for endpoint. That was a clever thing the customer have done. They have like a policy in their Intune, etc. So whatever devices are registered, they will immediately enroll in the Defender endpoint. That's cool. So what does that mean? It's not cool? You don't have, well, apparently they do have some sort of an asset management in terms of they have Intune, Azure. Exactly. Well, so let's put it this way. The reason why it's actually enrolled in the Defender for endpoint is that they actually have policies for that enrollment. So that's their asset management. Automatically, when you enroll, you will get a bunch of policies. So your device should be compliant, do whatever it requires. One of the compliance requirements is to be enrolled in the Defender for endpoint EDR system. And it's actually getting the whole package with different sets of configurations, including now the VPN configuration. Wonderful for the threat actor. Right? So now the threat actor have a machine that is fully onboarded to the company with that they just hacked that user account. It's both fully monitored by the EDR system, but also fully compliant. So it actually can connect the remote access solution. That's an interesting situation. I don't think they thought, the threat actor thought about the EDR sub thingy. They thought, you know what, we register, and then we have a compliant device, so we can just authenticate, come and go as we will, maybe connect to the Wi-Fi, connect to the VPN. They probably never thought about the EDR stuff going on there. So we have a few events related to that, and then another one moving some messages. Now, that's still the same user account, right? So they actually do multiple password resets for some weird reasons. So self-password reset triggered again. I guess this time is just to verify, the same thing I did with David's account. They go to the self-server password reset just to verify, hey, is the phone number we inputted there, et cetera, et cetera. They just want to just make sure that, yes, the user, the real user, will not be able to reset it back, at least for a while. It might have been an elevated rights user, a more privileged users. Not in this case, no. We believe this is just their way of verifying everything is working properly. Because they do this with another user, and they follow exactly the same work they did before. So this is the first user, MYRWIY, and then if we scroll down a little bit here, you see another user popping up over here, and says, self-server password reset, user submitted user ID, presented with verification options, and it follows. They did the first user, they go and do the second user, and they sign in, they look into the mailbox and do some other things, delete those messages, some JAMF, Cisco VPN failures, et cetera, and we got later on here, there is, let me see here. Another device is actually registered, so we'll get to that. So they proceed with these things, basically. And then if you look carefully down here we go. This is add a new device, register device, delete device, sign in, add device. A lot of weird things happens when you add devices. So, and then a new desktop dash device first seen in the Defender for Endpoint platform. Okay. So now we have two threat actor operated devices, fully compliant members of the customer's Azure infrastructure. They've got the whole package with the configuration options. They've got the VPN, and all of that is there. Everything that is needed for this to operate as a regular corporate compliant managed device. So that one is now noon at the 30th, right? The first one was in the middle of the night. These two users are not in the same geographical location. In the first case, the first event was actually in the middle of the night for the first user. Now in this is noon, but it is in nighttime for the second user still. So there is a timing thingy they are using there. How they actually get those SMSs, that's a different story. I don't have that in this presentation, but. And now we see interesting things happening. We see the first connections going on, right? So they simply connect to the VPN using those user accounts, the new computers. So they now establish VPN connectivity to the corporate network. It seems like the first device is somehow a standby device, and the second one is actually the one is used now. So it could be like they have a backup device of some sort. So they connect to VPN from, several times, forth and back. And then user happening some other things with the user. And now the next interesting event goes here. Devices are now, both of the devices has been identified by the customer's internal SOC, and both of the devices has been isolated. The reason for the isolation, the reason why they got caught, is that a network scan was observed, sourcing from these devices. I mentioned that yesterday in the keynote. I said they just need one small thingy to get in. And if we have our ears and eyes on the system, we just need one step in the wrong direction to get them. So one step in the wrong direction. A user connecting VPN doing a network scan. That was alerted upon. And that was enough reason to immediately isolate that client. Yes, there has been a few hours between the initial event where they actually onboarded the device and until they got caught. But as we also discussed yesterday, and many other speakers also highlighted, we are aiming at preventing a disaster. So as soon as possible, if we can spot it, if we can see what's going on, and if we can disarm that situation, that's our main target and main goal. So far, not that much of a harm. Well, a threat actor knows now they can onboard a device. They will get all the settings. They have the VPN configuration for the client. They have enough credentials, and so on and so forth. Right? So yes, there is a data leak. There is a situation. It's not a full onboarded ransomware situation, but still, we have an issue. We have a breach situation. It's still under control. Relatively speaking, this is way better than if this could progress without being noticed. A couple of more activities follows. So user account containment actions follows, removing users from groups, etc., and doing some updates on the devices, like they are not compliant anymore, so device no longer compliant, no longer managed, so some additional actions are taken on these devices. They are isolated. So let's have a look and see what was actually going on the devices themselves. I said, they are onboarded to our EDR system. So we have full visibility on what was done on them. So this is from starting when they got onboarded. So the first one was 0343 UTC. So they're running some Firefox, some Chrome. There's a Google update. Some Microsoft Edge update, a lot of other things. I would say this, when looking at these events, is that, okay, they just got the devices onboarded to Azure Intune. What happens, Intune will kick the device and say, hey, go update, unless you're not compliant. They probably never thought about they need to update their devices and software. But now getting an up-to-date device, right? The device must be compliant. And they're getting pieces of things installed. So we scroll through this list, you will see, yeah, Firefox is actually getting updated. A lot of other things are getting, you see, installers are kicked here and there. Let's scroll a little bit more till we find some more interesting stuff. So Firefox does a lot of fancy things when it updates. Actually, the Office package is installed as well, so they get Office. Now, at this point, they get Cisco AnyConnect installed. The VPN package from the asset management system, right? You need this to be a fully working, individual in the company. Cisco AnyConnect is being prepared and installed, and what else do we have here? A lot of updates because it's a VPN connection. Google Chrome is still updating. They probably thought, hey, come on, my machine is so slow now, I cannot work with it anymore. And, okay. Microsoft Azure Active Directory Broker plugin installed. Yeah, that's another good sign that the machine is managed now, right? Still Cisco AnyConnect Mobility Agent doing stuff. OneDrive, yeah, that's another beast. And they do install a very, very specific text editor. You mean the customer or the attacker? No, actually in this case, it's the attacker. Because when we double check this with the customer, are you guys using EM editor? EM what? It's like, no. So EM editor is actually a commercial piece of, a very fancy text editor. On both of these devices, the threat actor installs EM editor. For some weird reason. Okay? We all love our text editors, so not judging. And then we get, so that was one of the indications. Okay, wonder if the threat actor has been on other accounts or been doing other fancy, because we saw that, yeah, they were actually installing EM editor. Another thing we noticed they were installing, they actually installed the cool tool called Viscosity. Viscosity is a remote access solution. So for some reason, they needed that. This was not deployed by the company. This is the threat actor installing their favorite tools now. Okay. So Viscosity is getting installed. And some other MSI file is getting pushed in. So Cisco Secure Client, etc. Microsoft Intune Management Extension. Another sign that this machine is now managed by Intune. And they go for the, everybody that threat actors love, a network scanning tool. Advanced IP scanner. We see this very, very often. Advanced IP scanner is one of the, I would say, one of the most used tools, commercial tool-ish, in threat actor activities. It's legitimate. No antivirus will have an opinion of it, a bad opinion about it. Just straightforward, install it, run it. It does the job. So they do install this. Here we go. And that's now 1236 on one of these machines. So advanced IP scanner is installed. This actually what triggered the alert, the first alert that the SOC reacted to and says, hey, wait a minute, this is a flagged app. We don't have it in our business. Why would the user install an IP scanner? We know it's bad. So that was the first flag. And then the SOC operators were on it and looking at it and so on. And this was installed on both of the machines later on. And they installed another common thing, AnyDesk. There has been a lot of talks these 2 days about Cobalt Strike here, Cobalt Strike there, fancy agents. I totally agree. Up till like a year ago, we saw a lot of Cobalt Strike agents deployed when threat actors started doing something. But then like a year ago, approximately, that changed totally. They're not using any fancy hacking agent C2 communications anymore. They're just relying on commercial tooling. Guess what? They are not detected as bad. They are legit commercial tools. Hey, come on, everybody needs AnyDesk to remote control his or her own machine from home, right? It's convenient. I have my monster workstation at the office. I need to do my job, so I connect very conveniently to it from home using AnyDesk or, something anywhere. Just put the name of your choice in there for any remote access tool. And they are legitimate, they are signed, we actually have a hobby, me and David, collecting legitimate remote access tools and putting them in a list that we also address as these tools are shady. So we have custom alerting on them, on all of our customers. It's an interesting one, right? So they do their AnyDesk stuff, and still downloading. You see now they're starting putting things in the download folder, and they run with the local user called XDPC1. That I actually didn't change the name for that. That's how they call themselves. And it's the same user on both machines. So same user ID on both of these devices appears on them. Cool. What else do we have here? Let's do some searches. Yeah. We started now getting some of these CSV files. See, files modified. Well, Defender is doing something, but let's look at this. Forensic collection summary, scheduled task. What do you think this is? Who's doing forensic collection? These devices are managed by the SOC now. They got the alert about the IP scanner tool. So next step, they actually ordered, can you collect forensic package of these devices? So the EDR is now collecting a forensic package. Good. Things are going as planned, as expected, right? So now we are now 1853. So let's have a bit of a search for other things. So let's see if we get our interesting CSV files. Here we go. So on the 30th at 04:14, we got these kind of CSV files created. So this was the first user, the first device, right? Maybe before they connected the device, onboarded the device. They actually started enumerating Azure Enter ID quite early. which also confirms standard activities that threat actor does. As soon as they have any authenticated access anywhere, they will go enumerate everything they can enumerate. So they're just dumping tenant information, dumping all the users, dumping all the groups. This will contribute to build an understanding of what kind of environment they are in right now. So they're just following their whatever list of actions they need to perform. Do this, do this, do that. Right? So we have groups here, we have licenses, domains, tenants, and if we actually look carefully, what tool is doing that? This is another standard enumeration tool found on GitHub, etc. Azure Active Directory Recon. And it's run in, you see, downloaded to the user desktop, file unpacked, and just run the tool, and it will generate its results. So this is just run, click and run, and it will do all the things for you. Maybe another tool to put on the, the list of shady business tools that should be triggered on. Let's continue searching for some CSV files in here. Okay. Now, do you see anything weird with this file name or interesting? Now remember, the date for the information we are collecting is the 30th of January, 2024. There is a timestamp in that file name, right? 2024, 01, 05-ish? Or? Interesting artifact. This is the type of things we need to, when we start investigating things, okay, wait a minute, is this a brand new machine they actually installed for the purpose of this? Or is this just their regular machine they used to use, and they happen to onboard it to this customer's Azure Active Directory, and we start seeing other things? So that's a report was generated. Licenses and groups, some temporary files, right? Interesting stuff. We keep searching that because we will see a bunch of other things coming here. Okay. File created MasterCard CA certificate mft.txt. What? No, the customer is not in the financial sector, if you thought that. We saw the group was known to be interested of financial sector and telco and some other, right? If you dig about that name, if you Google that name, you will end up on MasterCard, and you will end up on, they have a special program to enroll to the MasterCard services. So these guys have probably have an agent enrolled to the MasterCard services on these devices. Comment? Yeah, so the device was isolated. Did we unisolate? No, the device was never unisolated after we isolated it through the SOC.
Or
how does it exactly? Why are we seeing things right now? So at that point in time, the device was not isolated, right? It's 10 a.m. That's a couple of hours before the device isolation. But even if the device is isolated, it's fully communicating with the EDR system, right? So they can still do local things, and we can still collect that information. So if they open files, run applications, that will still be fully visible, right? So somebody was doing something at that time, created those files, apparently, right? And when we double check with the customer, no, they are not in the financial sector. No, this is not related to them. No, they don't know anything. That user, the user is not even touching anything financial style. So it's not related. This is most probably another target or aimed towards something else. Which also interesting, which simply means, you know what, this device is not purposely built for this customer. We see a few indications that there is some point in time, a timestamp that tells something. We see this that tells something else. We do actually have another artifact. I cannot show it because it includes a lot of things. One of the SOC operators, they simply initiated a live session to this device, and then we listed the file structure on the C drive. You see the creation time of the Windows standard folders are in December. So when you install your Windows device, the Windows folder itself gets created the first time. The user's folder gets created. So these were created mid of December. So this was definitely not purposely built for this customer. It's just a reuse of something. And then you have the MasterCard CA staging. MFT is not the master file table. It's MasterCard MFT. Those of you who think MFT, master file table, know. And then they do a CSR, private key generation. So they're probably doing an enrollment in the MasterCard tooling. Where are the files created? Location? EM editor was probably the one doing whatever with these files. I guess that's the reason why they are using EM editor. It's got to have some feature, something. It's maybe like, you know, all of these, when you create file keys and do CSRs, etc., you will end up with base64 encoded files and things like that. EM editor maybe, I haven't checked it. I'm just speculating now, right? So it could be that could be a reason for, probably EM editor is related to that one. You see the execution of it comes quite before. EM editor plugins is just starting up, right? Before, and these are in the recent folder. So EM editor starting up. EM editor has been used to edit those files. It's reading its recent file list, double checking. All of these artifacts are very good. As an investigator, as a forensic persona, you will be looking for all of these artifacts just to understand what was going on in the system, whether this is related or not related. Now, this is all related because this is the threat actor device. So regardless if it is related to this customer or not, then it's still interesting. We have another interesting story goes on. This is probably not directly targeting this customer because when we double check any Amazon things you guys have, no. So that could be the whatever other engagements they have. They have some relationship to that. Amazon EAD, Canada. Interesting. And then Viscosity installer was downloaded at that time, and so on. We actually see they were more or less struggling after the isolation of the machine. We saw a lot of activities, like they're trying to restart processes, they were rebooting the machines, didn't really understand why they wouldn't be able to connect anything anymore. So VPN was disconnected, network connectivity is limited only to communicating to the EDR platform, nothing else working, and so forth. Question?
That point in time, they never will get a hint that the device is monitored and collecting data?
I guess they figured it out later on because they really tried to do a lot of things. So now we are still, I mean, if we go, this timeline goes all the way till actually, so devices were up and running until the 1st of February. They really tried to get hey, why isn't this thing working? Good question. Was this a virtual machine, or a physical device? These two were actually virtual machines running on top of VMware workstation, not server platform, running on VMware workstation on an i7, a laptop with an i7 Intel CPU. If this could eventually be a template, they just create a copy of the VM and run it again, maybe. They have oh, this is our most updated toolbox or whatever, so they just make a new copy of that VM and run it. Yeah, yeah, that could be absolutely something. Yeah, repair pulse secure, a lot of things they keep going back to the machine, and there are this indicates a lot of restarts and things they try really to get this thing to work, struggling with it over a few days. And then, yeah. You see a lot of when you see the WER files, these are Windows error reporting, so things are not working properly anymore, probably because they cannot communicate, etc. So applications are crashing, and so on. So somebody is trying to do something, they're not really getting that work, trying to run Firefox here and then, Firefox tries to update, and so on. So this is what happened. The threat actor accessed other applications in the customer environment. Very regular operation they do. Threat actors or hackers, the first time they sign in, they will go to, there is a My Application list. My Applications dot Office 365, Azure, whatever the URL is. And then they go and they test every application. Do I have access here, here, here? In this case, there were other communication platforms like Slack, messaging, etc. There is a single sign-on towards different sorts of cloud services, SaaS PaaS style services, and so on. So they were on every single one of these, enumerating and figuring out what kind of access do we have on these systems. And all of that is visible in the logs. So all of that is compiled in a report, and a more extensive timeline than the one I showed you. This was a cleaned up timeline, so we can show some of the artifacts without outing too much. And then, yeah. So I hope you guys see now, these are just regular IT people. They're not as fancy as some describing them to be. They just follow a list of things. They just follow, do this, do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they struggle with IT just as everybody else is doing it, right? It's life. Somebody said this word. Yeah, I tried now. I tried to scan the network, but it's not working. I wonder why. Well, your device is isolated. Just remember that. It's well. So what can we do about this? We actually did a few actions immediately together with the customer when this was discovered. So first and foremost, monitoring the password reset properly. There are a lot of events and logs in there. And making sure that you have good command over what's going on. In this very particular case, they actually disabled the self-service password reset altogether, at least temporarily, and replaced that with, yeah, you call the service desk. We have a 24/7 worldwide service desk. You call them, they will add your user account to a special group. They will monitor, so you do your password reset. They will call back and verify you actually did it, and then they remove your ability to do your password reset anymore. So that one option they implemented. Another option is actually implementing the temporary access pass as a solution, which is you call, you'll be called back, you get a temporary access pass, you do your whatever you need to do. And the same thing goes for enrolling new security info, that's MFA, and the device enrollment. So device enrollment, they didn't really thought or think about the device enrollment was wide open the way it was. So all the IT division, well, you know what? No, we shouldn't have device enrollment because you're getting pre-enrolled, pre-staged devices. So that was disabled in total. A lot of these things, I mean, we have been using device enrollment like a few years ago to legitimately get access to environment. So this is nothing new we're seeing here. We have YouTube sessions recorded about that. We have been demonstrating that in different venues. This is definitely nothing new on the horizon. But we need to think about it. We need to consider these kind of things and actually fix them. So these are just a couple of things that were directly related to this event and the lessons learned in here. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching the Excel. Right? And don't forget the smiley faces. Yes?
What's that SMS activity identified? How they got access? Was that SIM swapping or something?
The SMS activity, I didn't actually, we never interest ourselves in exactly when things are related to user behavior or it gets more into the privacy space. So that's the customer solves that. We were told that there were somebody calling the user more or less threatening. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then because it was really fast, they were not struggling about anything. So they just did 1, 2, 3, they got the SMS code, and then everything was done. So we got the description that was something related to something like that. Question over there?
What support, if any, do you have for collecting this kind of information for other operating systems besides Windows?
Okay. How do we collect other operating system besides Windows? So this information I showed you is only collected from the EDR platform. So if you would have a Linux device enrolled in the EDR platform, we will have the timeline, just a similar way, right? If we're talking about things that are not enrolled to an EDR platform or a monitoring platform or management something, we have our own tooling. Every forensicer will give you different answers. We have developed our own toolkit. So for non-Windows systems, I will give you a binary, self-executable, that will collect system logs, file system artifacts, and all of that. And then when you give us that result, we have an analysis tool that will go through, restructure the data, and we build the timeline.
And does this also cover mobile devices?
What about mobile devices? Mobile devices are not so easy because of the default sandboxing, right? So you basically need to break out. So mobile devices, more or less very difficult to get information unless you can run a legitimate piece of software on them, right? And then you do struggle a lot. So Apple, they're doing whatever they can to prevent anybody from running these kind of tools. Google are going the same direction. I used to quote, a few years ago, FBI had like a need to figure out what was going on an iPhone. They reached out to Apple. Apple said, talk to this, right? So a few months later, FBI had a press release about, you know what, we found a 0-day. So it is a struggle because of the default security layers that exist in the mobile devices. I wish we had the same type of security layers on other OSs. It's good and bad. It's good so we can protect our users better ways, but it's bad if we need to dig and see what's going on.
Thank you.
I guess it's lunchtime, right? So happy that you stayed here. I will be here for the remaining of the day, so just hook me up if you have any more questions or something. Thank you once more.